Welcome to Biztech's Jobs and Careers show. Now, on the show, we bring HR experts and industry leaders to give you insights into the jobs market and the careers landscape across the region. Our guest today is Mahadhir Aziz. He's the CEO of Futurise, which is based in Malaysia. Futurise is a company that is wholly owned subsidiary of Cyberview Sdn Bhd under the Ministry of Finance, and it focuses on innovation, regulation, and commercialization. And of course, what that means is it's all about jobs as well. Now, welcome to the show, Mahadhir.
Thank you.
Now, give
Happy
us an
to be here.
overview of what Futurise does to start off with.
Well, we are quite new to the scene, relatively. We were established back in late 2017 with the very idea of setting up a platform for the entrepreneurs, for the ecosystem to be able to bring their technologies, their solutions to the mass market. Along the way, this is basically as part of a whole gamut of agencies in Malaysia to be able to do that. But we did rather find a niche whereby we saw regulatory frameworks that are part of the barriers to entry and also impediments to some of these things being pushed to the market. So we discussed with the Ministry of Finance then, and we established a proper mandate program called National Regulatory Sandbox, and the mandate was given to Futurise for us to push through. So the mandate was issued out in early 2018 and has been a major part of what we do today and for the foreseeable future.
So that's your key focus area. And you also focus on a couple of key areas broadly. So it's the sharing economy, it's mobility, as well as sports technology. And sports techs is interesting because you categorize unmanned aerial vehicles as sports techs as well as autonomous vehicles. Could you kind of share a little bit how that kind of all gels together?
Okay. Well, we have always been anchoring ourselves to industry sectors. So when we set out, there's financial technology, financial services rather. We have construction, and we talked to quite a number of construction companies. We looked at agriculture and tourism, for example. And then out of this request, where we did solicitation, consultation with the industry, two major industries that came to mind. One was transportation, believe it or not, and the other is healthcare. And this was back in February, March of 2018.
Okay.
So what came out from that was the technology that was introduced into the market that would help revamp, change, and evolve, I think, the way transportation is being done or healthcare services being commissioned and provided. So that's how we ended up with the technology that you spoke about. One would be drones or autonomous flying vehicles, and also the autonomous cars. That was basically the big things that Malaysia was looking at in conjunction, autonomous cars in conjunction with the third national car project at that time. We were looking at EV, EEV, and then autonomous cars as well. So we didn't choose to go into technology rather, but we started with the problems facing the industries.
Given that scenario, how do you then help these companies in this innovation to move up the innovation landscape in these areas? So healthcare and mobility solutions, because Malaysia is not known as an innovator here.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that we argued even way back earlier than that, 2014, 2015, was that it is time, and it is rather timely for Malaysia to become creators rather than consumers of technology. We have had experience in terms of developing solutions. We may not be the pen drive creator. We cannot create that every single time, but rather we are good in creating platforms. We are good in creating web-based and mobile solutions, of which we have seen some of this. We are looking at MyTaxi then that became Grab. You're looking at that point, you're looking at companies that have created solutions that can look at township management that couldn't find jobs in Malaysia. When I say jobs, rather projects in Malaysia with the local authorities, but rather found more than 25 cities in Indonesia to be able to do that. So we're saying this is another part of the brain drain. We're losing businesses, Malaysian businesses outside to Malaysia. So we would like to bring those back here. And by way of doing that, creating local jobs or Malaysian jobs as well. So by doing this, I think we work with the industries to understand the concerns that they have, to understand the technologies, and also the benefits that they bring to the market. Talk to the regulators who are regulating the industries, and also the consumers themselves. When we talk about consumers, the policymakers, the benefactors as well, onto the same table, and to have this discussion and agree the steps to do this, the regulatory framework to be able to do this, and then the platform for them to test what sort of regulations that we can do this before we actually launch it to the public.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you a little bit, and we're going to drill down in detail on some of your success stories. But Mahadhir, Futurise has released its regulatory summary for stakeholders. Now, its inaugural report covers 3 years, 2018 to 2020. Now, tell us about the milestones and achievements that you perhaps would like to highlight.
Well, before I go to that, I've got questions, and somebody might ask, how come we released this 3 years late or something like that? Shouldn't this come out in the first year itself? I think the political landscape of Malaysia and the situation, and I need to be able to address that. When we first launched ourselves together with the National Regulatory Sandbox program, I think the country was also undergoing a political change. So we needed to bring ourselves up back to the new government and explain ourselves and get a refresh mandate for that one. So some of those work that we did in 2018 and also part of 2019 had to be compiled into this report, hence the inaugural report. But coming back to the achievements and milestones, I think some of those things that we can touch is very much on the areas of guidelines rather for the autonomous aerial vehicle. So you're looking at the drones in short.
Okay.
There are a few guidelines that we looked at that we did together with Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia. Some is called the Malaysian Civil Aviation Regulation. Some has been translated further by CAM and also the Ministry of Transportation into the flight operative definition, and so on. So what we did there was that not only on the guidelines that we jointly developed together and we assisted CAM and MOT on this, but also the establishment of the drone testing zone. And this is where...
This is very, very important to Malaysia because at the moment we are ranked 24 in the world in terms of the drone industry. However, we have a world-class drone company called Aerodyne, which is the second largest drone company in terms of services company in the world and growing very, very rapidly. So they've been on one of our shows on Biztech before, on Asia's Hottest Startup Show. So that's a very important future industry for Malaysia. Where else, which other industries did you highlight and have you been working in your report?
Well, I would think that I think you touch a bit on the sports technology or sports tech, which is very interesting. And it is, yes, rightly a bit peculiar against the background of what we have done before this. But we strongly feel that sports as an industry and sport as a business as a whole is something that is untapped in Malaysia because we are looking at the actual performance of sports, but not the companies who would enhance those performance.
Give us some examples of sports tech that you're working with.
I think one would be nutrition, two would be the apparels, and three would be the accessories in terms of equipment, shoes, hockey sticks, bicycles, especially. So these are improvements and augmentations that are happening in those areas, and Malaysians are very much part of it.
Okay, give us some examples.
You can say, without naming the company, but I know there's a local Malaysian company who have developed apparels that can cool athletes down, and they are selling this as good as what the Nikes and the Adidas are doing out there with the climate pool and so on. So we're trying to push this to the forefront and say that research has been done on this kind of apparels. Let's have these apparels being sponsored for Malaysian athletes and see how does that improve our performance, say on track and field versus swimming, and also say, for example, cycling as well. So that's one of them. The other part that is even more critical is, again, the studies of the science that goes into the bodies of our own athletes, our own Chong Wei, our own Nicole David. For that, DNAs are being studied. Our Malaysian athletes' DNAs are being exported to other countries, being studied, and then sent back to us and say, okay, this is good and that is good. But again, information of those athletes are being shared beyond our borders. So we're trying to bring those back inside. Again, there's a science and technology behind this. There's also a regulatory framework in terms of, I think, controlling and somewhat managing what can be shared outside and what should be kept within our borders. So,
but are we up the value chain enough that our companies are sophisticated enough to then commercialize all of this? Because that's what your reason for being is.
Well, I think that we have enough of these companies. I also spoke with Mosti. So basically, we didn't do this and then just theorize and say, okay, Malaysian companies are good enough. So the engagement that we have done before this is very much with the local, private, and also public universities. We brought it up to also Mosti, Malaysian Science and Technology Ministry, to look at bringing and commercializing some of the R&D that they have done. So basically, it's not just one side from just the industry, but we're bringing in universities and higher learning institutions to be able to combine and meet somewhere. So the news of I think Mosti establishing a new agency to look at technology commercialization is something that we welcome very much. We are working together with them to look at that. So basically, while we look at regulatory changes and adaptations and new frameworks and also jobs, we are looking at how do we commercialize this together. So again, when we talked about, I think the introduction of innovation, commercialization, and also regulation that we do, we are not set out to do everything on our own.
What else is there in your impact report?
We do have, we announced something called a collaboration basically with the Science Academy of Malaysia, or Academy Science Malaysia rather, which looks at utilizing a platform, our open innovation platform called Futurity. So what Futurity does is basically it links solutions to problems. It links information, research work that has been done and collected over the years, which is currently spread out over universities, academic institutions, and also some research that have not been published yet. And we need to collect all this and put it into one place where we can match that through the use of intelligence, artificial intelligence, and also matching of words to the issues and problems that are currently being raised out there. So Academy Science Malaysia is very much looking into what needs to be done. They were looking at hydrogen economy, I think a couple of years ago. What that means is something that we are still discussing with them. And we're looking at jobs creation. So these are the new things that the Science Academy is looking at and bringing this up to the government. I think now that we have the digital economy blueprint of Malaysia, that needs to come up and see if we can actually make use of what we have developed or what we have researched. So again, Futurity becomes that open innovation platform that can share thoughts, that can actually match problems and solutions, that can match companies with also the funders as well. So I don't want to go too far and say that, okay, this is a one platform that solves everything out there, but it is something that we are currently working with ASM.
Yeah, jobs are a very important criteria. And you announced that Futurise would be impacting and creating more than 32,000 jobs through various programs and initiatives. How are you actually doing that? I mean, how do you quantify that?
Okay, I think the numbers that we have been supported by some of the researches done by other research organizations and also consulting organizations. However, I think those numbers did come with certain educated information that we have. One is that by unlocking the use of drones in not just corporate level, but individual levels as well, that unlocks a new kind of jobs that can be created. For example, drone operators or drone pilots, for example. These were created together with a company that is also working with us called Polar Drone through the Drone Academy Asia to train more drone pilots. So the supply of drone pilots can become, I mean, you and I, we can become drone pilots and get certified for this and can do this part-time. We can go to the companies like Aerodyne, like Ofotech, and provide piloting services, provide engineering services, provide software engineering services, artificial intelligence, data analysis services, and this is only talking about drone services. So if you were to quantify some of the jobs, new jobs being created or recreated and repurposed specifically because of this unlocking of this regulation and guidelines for Malaysia to allow drone operations to happen, I think those would be some of those numbers that we are looking at. If I were to bring it back to the industries that anchored us, then the use of drones can be used in agriculture industry. I think this is where the drone spraying of pesticides, herbicides, and things like that will happen, and we will be looking at exponential growth in terms of different jobs that we can do now, and also reduce our dependency on foreign labor.
Yes, because I think that's reducing the dependency on foreign labor is, I think, is something that you mentioned in your regulatory sandbox initiative. I think that's one of the key things. How do you think that Malaysia can move up the value chain quickly? Because we are in the middle income trap right now.
That's right.
All agencies and in the government have been putting very high emphasis on getting better quality jobs to Malaysia. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, for one, we cannot say that we can work and live entirely without foreign labor. There are the types of jobs, I think we have talked about this to death. Everyone has been talking about it. There are certain jobs that would require foreign labor to exist, especially when it's dangerous and dirty and so on. But the thing about this is that we want quality workers, foreign laborers coming from that side. So we want to be able to reduce the numbers that come in. We want to increase the types of quality, and we want to be able to use technology whenever it is possible. If you look at, I think we learned a lot from Wuhan experience, especially during this pandemic, where they had drone delivery of food services. And back then we were still okay. We were watching videos on YouTube and Facebook, and people were sending, okay, this is how Wuhan handles pandemic, sending drones, food delivery and all that. But when it came to us, we are depending on solutions like Food Panda, Grab Food, and things like that. Technologies like that to be able to get delivery, not just or only delivery of services and food, but again, to create those jobs for those delivery guys. So again, these are the jobs that would allow Malaysians to participate rather than foreigners. So again, there are areas, I think we live in townships and all that. The cleaners, the local authorities, what do you call that? Maintenance, landscape maintenance and all that. Today, we are still relying on foreign labors. But again, the use of technology where we can have automated machines that sprays water and water the plants and things like that should be looked at seriously. We cannot be depending on this of foreign labors together. So again, my call is that I want to be able to activate as many industries as I can. But again, Futurise is very young and very small, and we need to stay focused on to what we can do and see how we can network with other agencies to be able to do that.
And that's my final question to you, actually. You know, what's next for Futurise moving forward? What are you going to focus on? Because you're only 15 people. There is a big mandate for you in some ways when you look at your mandate. But what are your focus areas in order to achieve tangible results for Malaysia in terms of not only for yourselves, but also in terms of impact for jobs?
Okay. I think the biggest thing that we have to look at for Futurise moving forward now is that we have the big gorilla that we are facing, which is basically the digital economy blueprint, or the My Digital. And that is something that I think all agencies would have to align themselves to. In fact, we have taken the first step. We have signed and issued a joint press release with Malaysia Productivity Corporation to look at the regulatory sandbox. There is one thrust in there that talks about expansion of regulatory sandboxes, number one, and number two, on the development of agile regulatory frameworks. So these are the things that are, if you can say, complementary between MPC and also Futurise. So we have something to look forward there. But again, I do want to be able to talk to other agencies and bring more vertical agencies, if you may, to look at how they are running their programs supporting My Digital. And this is extremely important. It's not just only for Futurise, and we are not doing it because Futurise tries to collaborate with everyone, but rather we have, I think, a big government agenda that we need to push forward together as a whole of a government approach.
Mahadhir, thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Now, we've been speaking to Mahadhir, Aziz, CEO of Futurise Malaysia. Now, I'm Brian Fernandez on Biztech's Jobs and Careers show. This interview will be on our Facebook and our LinkedIn sites, as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please like and subscribe to our various platforms. Thanks for tuning in.